let's go.
Let's get rolling. I get Mr. Kevin Huntsman back in the driver's seat again. Get to spend quite a bit of time with you here on some internal calls, but never got you on the show before. So wanted to bring you in, and I know you're kind of the man behind the Wizard of Oz curtain over there, you know what I mean, that gets to publish these wonderful rankings. So tell the folks a little bit about Mastio, and also how the heck did you get into this? Because this is your 21st edition?
My first year, yes, sir.
21st. There you go, Blackjack. So explain it.
That's it. Well, first off, Bobby, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be on with you. You guys do a great job. Appreciate the relationship we have developed as well. So Mastio has been in business, Bobby, since 1989. So we were very excited. Our 36th year in business. We started measuring customer perception, customer satisfaction in the plastics industry, and to this day continue to work with the Exxon Mobils, the Shells, the Chevrons of the world in that space. Mid 90s, we brought on the energy space to our practice, where we were measuring that same type of customer satisfaction with pipelines, natural gas marketers. So we do a lot of work, for instance, with Berkshire Hathaway Energy, who is our biggest client on the energy side for the work that we do. And then about 22 years ago, we did a single client proprietary study in the LTL space for a carrier that was preparing to sell themselves. So we had been pitching this idea to the carriers. We thought it fit our model quite well, and we did that study. The single client 22 years ago, and then 21 years ago, we started our first LTL industry survey, assessing the perception and the performance of the carriers through the shippers' eyes. And, that first year, I believe we had about 3 subscribers, and this year we're up to, I believe, 25 or 26. So we've been very fortunate to build this relationship over the years. And listen, the people that get the most credit are the shippers, because they give us their time, Bobby, to give the feedback. And then the team at Mastio does a spectacular job of capturing that data from these shippers. It sounds easy, but it's a very hard job to really peel back the onion and get the level of detail that we want and that the carriers require from us.
Now, how did the first one really come about? Did it come about kind of organically? You were already doing or seeing how this worked within a different industry sector, right? And back in 1989, the only plastics I probably cared about was my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
That's it, brother. That's it.
But the first
I was not.
Out, like, how did it come about? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? And then there was some light bulb moment where you were like, wait a minute, I can deliver value across the board and probably scale this. So, like, take me through that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it was organic completely. And really the genesis of it was talking to people at Yellow. They were about 45 minutes from our office in St. Joseph, Missouri. So we met some people at Yellow and teed this idea up. And they're like, you know what, I think this could get some traction in the industry. And it was honestly just good old fashioned bird dogging, if you will, as far as reaching out to these carriers, pitching this idea. We attended the TSMA conference a few years early on. Great organization that really helped us. Another individual that really helped us jumpstart this was a gentleman named Chip Overby from Old Dominion Freight Lines.
I know Chip, yeah.
He's a great guy. And then the folks at Pitt, Ohio were also very helpful in those early days through that conference, and then us really building this. And we knew it would take time to get the critical mass, but we really felt like we had a good product. We have a great methodology, good team, and we thought we could scale this. It took a little while, but I'll be honest with you, it's bigger now than I ever thought it would be. If you would ask me 21 years ago, I'd have said, no, there's no way.
Yeah.
But again, good people around us, good people to talk to. And listen, the carrier community is great community, Bobby. They all compete, but they all want each other to succeed.
Yeah.
So we've been, I think, and I hope, instrumental in helping many of these carriers improve their services over the years.
Well, you know what's funny? Here's an ironic moment for you, Kevin. MyCarrier started the exact same way, ironically enough. The two founders, Chris and Mike,
Yep.
Their first little gig is MyCarrier, as an entity was consulting for YRC,
Great.
and figuring out like where are the gaps? What do you guys wish you could give to your customer? Like where are you deficit in technology? What kind of data are you deficit in? And then before you know it, it rolls into another carrier, right? And similar problems happen, and you go, hey, there might be product fit and need here to kind of scale that. So I thought that was kind of funny that it, like most things in LTL, that kind of originated out of that yellow roadway corp, right? Both good and bad things like that happened.
Absolutely, and then them bringing in USF in the beginning of the history of this study. So yeah, it's again one a lot of times like a snowball going down the hill. Bobby, it just catches more snow, more scale, and here we are 21 years later, and all this gray hair.
Amen, man. Mine's getting more. Even my kids the other day, I'm sitting in line at Lake Powell waiting to go up, and they go, "Dad, all your hair is getting white." And I go, it's because of you. It's your
That's
fault.
it.
I
That's
used to
it.
have
That's it.
normal colored hair, and now it's just
Yeah,
all graying up on me. So,
that
oh boy,
happens
that
fast.
happens fast. So you kind of you mentioned or said the word methodology. What is the method behind the madness? How do you go out there and collect and get this information?
Great question. So there's a lot of legwork, a lot, as you can well imagine, time spent before we ever make the first telephone call. We
Mhm.
work each year with the carriers on the questionnaire.
Yep.
We've Most of the attributes that we measure have been in the study for the entire life of the study. The 30
Mhm.
plus attributes that we measure, some have changed over time, especially around technology, Bobby. So we work with our carrier partners on that questionnaire, the open-ended comments. Here, this time around, we added some cross border questions,
Mhm.
given the issues around trade that we read about every day in tariffs. So we try to mimic what's going on in the industry as far as the types of questions that we ask. We had some NMFC questions last year in advance of the switch over in July. But we do work very closely with the clients on the questionnaire, Bobby. And then from there, we have a very extensive database we've been building over the last 21, 22 years for the study. And we'll work with carriers and to let them know, hey, this is the pool of who we're reaching out to. Are we missing any shippers? Would you like to supplement that? For us, the key to this is not being a biased uh, option for the carriers to use for us to collect data. So when we're doing an interview, which is about a 15 to 20-minute interview, we don't reference any carrier. We just ask Bobby, who are your four primary carriers that you've worked with in the last 12 months? So we really push to get a good overview of the industry from a geographic perspective, from a type of customer perspective. A lot of NCIS classification work that we do, and really the key tenet of all of that, and I referenced it early on, is the willingness of the people to talk to us. So we try to make it very easy, Bobby, for them to give us feedback, and then the Mastio team collecting these interviews. So they're very, very good at, as I mentioned, peeling back the onion, capturing feedback. And the key thing is talking to the right person too. I mean, it's that's the beauty of the telephone interview. The way we do this is we know who we're talking to. Sometimes we may call and Bobby says I'm the right guy, and Bobby's like gets into the questionnaire and says, no, I'm not. You need to talk to Mike or to Chris. So there's a lot of legwork that goes into each individual interviews, and we'll do about 1,700 telephone interviews for the study, which is going to publish at the end of this month, very first few days, perhaps, of October.
Yeah. Now, do you find that the folks that you're interviewing are they more of like your traditional like warehouse managers or manage the process, or the ones that are more of your IC individual contributors that are really executing the process, or is it a good mix of both?
It's a mix. We like the people that are executing because they're working with the carriers. And I think a lot of that, Bobby, really depends on the size of the organization. If it's an enterprise type shipper, a Home Depot, a Walmart, that's structured differently than if you and I own a company and we're doing 30 shipments per week. So we may talk to the president of some companies and we may talk to a director of logistics. It just varies so much depending on the structure of the company we're speaking to.
I'm sure that's something that you've seen change because now at 21 years into this, right? When was your first study? Like 90, what, seven, eight? When did you do your first one?
No, no, no. We do it every year. So it's like 2002,
Oh, okay.
2003.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. Our first our very first interviews for other studies started in '89. So we've seen a big shift across these types of industries over the last 36 years.
Yeah, but the one that everybody knows you for today is what you're saying didn't start until early 2000s.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So everybody kind of knows you, and that's a good segue here of that main study you produce annually. But a lot of carriers might not know of some of the other work you do because there is like a level of specialty projects that you work with carriers on. So kind of tell me about that and some of the special projects, if you can, right? Open up on some of the other stuff you do for carriers out there who either don't work with you today or have ambitions of gathering more information.
Absolutely. So about three-fourths of our business is what we call the multi-client model, Bobby, where we do, for instance, the LTL survey one time and sell it to 25 companies. And then you have the proprietary single client engagements where we'll work with that client specifically. Who do they want us to interview? What do they want us to ask? We have a number of LTL carriers where we do quarterly surveys specifically focused around net promoter score, so the NPS. So the Mastio annual study is a great snapshot in time, a great tool to analyze my performance versus the competition. The quarterly is a more focused, what I call maybe rifle shot view of, okay, I want to look and see how I'm performing with the SMB market in maybe a particular region. So the single client studies, we've done single client studies for carriers around the website. We've looked at work we've done for lost business. If you've lost business, Mastio can go out and survey some of those customers and truly understand why, because every sales rep is going to tell you it's price, and rarely is it price. It's a combination of multiple factors. So really, there's no limit to what type of data we can capture. I think sometimes we're very focused on what we're good at, so we're almost as much as what we won't do as what we will, and we found that to be very helpful for us in the work that we do, especially on the proprietary side. But to that note, we also do an LTL study in Canada, a multi-client every other year. We do work in air and ocean freight. So the expediters of the world, different companies like that, global customs brokerage as well. So we've got a pretty good suite where we're capturing feedback around logistics through different modes with very similar type respondents.
Yeah. Now, I'm familiar with your study, and we've seen some carriers up there who've held their spots for a considerable amount of time. What are some of your biggest surprises with the risers and fallers on the recent list? Who's really been like, man, like they're on the move right now, and I've seen this trending up year over year.
From the national carrier group, I'd call out XPO. They've done a really good job. They've got a great leadership team. I think every national carrier is trying to get better. Old Dominion, I'm not sure where they're at for this upcoming edition, but for the last maybe 14 years, they've won what we call the National Carrier Award, the National Mastio Quality National Carrier Award. But XPO is definitely improving. From when they were Conway, they really did great. There was a bit of a drop back, but the team at XPO is doing a great job. Saya is improving in certain areas. I think maybe struggling a bit with a lot of the growth. Estes, being a private carrier, is in that group as well as R&L.
Yeah.
Especially Estes, Bobby has done an exceptional job over the years, I think, of leveraging technology and the relationship to improve those services offered to the carriers. So then you get into the regional carriers like Averitt, Daylight, carriers like that perform exceptionally well and have for a long period of time. That being private, like Estes, don't have, as I call it, the 90-day shot clock of Wall Street. So they can behave and act a little bit differently and maybe look a little further down the runway as far as investments go.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think if I were to answer that same question, the two biggest ones I see that have kind of risen or fallen recently are kind of going through the same scenario. One, an XPO who's been a riser, right? But it was post decoupling, and they were able to hyper focus and put a myopic view on LTL. And the other one that I've seen fall more than they had in the past is probably FedEx, but they're yet to decouple. And I think you're going to see them rise again once this is done. I think it's created thrash between people's opinion and speculation from the outside in, but also that's going to bleed internally. And I think they've got a really good team, but they've also got a big, job ahead of them to decouple this. But those are probably some of the biggest surprises I've seen in your studies in the recent years, is XPO climbing up and then FedEx kind of having a fall from grace for a little bit, but they're both going through a very similar pathway. One's just ahead of the other one with that decoupling.
And I've said this for a while that I think FedEx post decoupling is going to be a very, very strong carrier. Listen, they're the biggest now.
Always been a
So
monster. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I really do. I mean, there's going to be some pain associated with that. We've seen it, but I do think it, and it's going to take a little while. I always tell carriers, you can decline very rapidly in the Mastio study, but it takes longer to climb up. So I mean, the fall from grace can happen fairly quickly, but to where you want to get back to takes time. Shippers want to see that repeated exposure to a higher level of service, probably over a period of time before they really start to think differently about their perception of the carrier.
Oh, and you know this, LTL is and probably always will be a very big relationship game. And I say
Yes.
it all the time, you get trust in raindrops and you lose it in buckets. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that goes to your point that it's going to take longer to climb up than it is to fall down because you're going to have to collect this in drops and not buckets.
I agree. That's a good analogy. I'm going
Yeah.
to steal that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go for it. Because that one got me the other day too as we were going through. I was like, that's so LTL right there.
Yes.
Uh,
And it's a hyper competitive environment. I mean,
yeah.
there's nobody stuck. And I mean, listen, TFI, T Force is going through changes as well, and they'll be better on the other side of it. It just takes time, and oftentimes when you're going through a change like that, it can be painful for the customer. And customers have long memories. Shippers have long memories.
Yeah. Now, when you find that a shipper has a problem with a carrier, they have that attitude where I'm going to take my ball and go home, right? And you said it's not typically price, and I believe you. I think a lot of it, in my opinion or my experience anyway, is it is price, but it's invoice price, not not what they were quoted. It's usually on like the reconciliation or a claim issue where it wasn't paid off or resolved in the manner that they had anticipated and kind of turned that one off. That's what I typically.
I agree. Didn't mean to interrupt you there. I'm sorry. Accuracy of invoices is an attribute that we measure. So it is interesting to draw correlations, calculate correlations to other attributes when you see that. I mean, invoice issues is a massive pain point for a shipper. Listen, they just want to ship their goods and they want to pay. They don't want to go back and forth. They don't want to fight you. They want the right bill so they can pay it. And I think when you have pain points like that, it's a struggle to the shipper. And I think what I call it, I reference the old Ronald Reagan trickle down economics. There's a trickle down effect. If your invoice is consistently incorrect, then I start to question the other things you do. Albeit they may not have changed, or hell, you could have gotten better. But the perception by the shipper is if they can't figure out a way easily for me to give them my money, then I start to think, well, they're breaking my stuff. Well, they're not picking it up on time. So there's this
You put them under the
cascade effect.
microscope. Yeah.
Yes. So it's a critical piece. I mean, we measure ease of doing business, and that's one of the most important attributes, albeit broad, but it has a significant impact. The easier you are to do business with, the better you're going to be.
Yeah. Now, have you seen a trend since you've started this in the early 2000s where maybe you were talking more and more shippers had like a traffic manager, and now what you're seeing when you interview these folks is they've kind of moved the traffic manager as an isolated role, and it's kind of been just lumped into some type of operations or warehouse manager role. Have you seen that kind of transpire over your 21 years and just talking to shippers, like changes on that end?
We have, I mean, now the term that you see a lot is logistics manager, different things for that.
Leader
Where
manager.
traffic, yeah, so where traffic might have been the key word back then, logistics, a little more holistic overview of that type of role is what we do see that today. And again, I'll go back to my comment earlier, Bobby. A lot of that has to do with the size of company as well. So some of the SMBs, again, you may be dealing with an SVP or a president or a VP that's on their docks every day, that's highly engaged in this process, because for many of these companies, it's a significant spend for them. They have got, and the other comment I would make there over the years, Bobby, you and I talked about this over dinner, is the role of the CFO on the influence on who they're going to do business with. So it used to be that never made it up to the C-suite at all, but I think it has, especially at the finance level, because it's such a significant spend.
Yeah. Well, and make no doubt about it. LTL, one of the reasons I absolutely love it is a very consistent model. But one thing that's been very consistent to your point of the CFO paying attention more is year over year, those costs have continued to increase, right? 5 or 6%. And you keep adding enough of those chips, that gets tall enough that it's going to catch the finance director's eye. And now it's folding in, which I do think it is a blessing and a curse to get it all involved and bundled into one. But yeah, you are seeing freight as an expensive sale with LTL be considered more than it probably ever had in the past, especially with costs increasing everywhere and people being very cognizant of margin.
Well, I think especially since we're in a pretty soft environment right now, I think it's exacerbated, and that lens is pretty tight, and it's tight across, to your point, every spend. So LTL just happens to be one that at times the GRIs, like you said, they stack up, and over the course of 4 or 5 years, it's significantly more. So
Now, do you see any trends when you interview shippers kind of based on the type of product that they ship where, if I ship something that's more commoditized, do I view my carriers as more of a commoditized offering versus if I'm shipping something higher value like a computer or something that has to make it? Do you see the way they engage or the carriers they use differ based just solely on who that shipper is?
it can happen, I think, especially to the truly commoditized. If you don't necessarily care if it's 3 or 4 days or how you get it there, do you do some type of intermodal program with that type of freight? But we do see. So I mean, you look at the higher end type products that are shipping. It is seems to me that that type of freight is moving towards some of the higher end performing carriers. And listen, you get what you pay for in many instances. So if you're not worried about it getting there within a certain time frame and there's a lot of flexibility, then you're going to go with a lower price carrier.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive. So you'll like this fun fact, has nothing to really do with what we're talking about, but we were just digging into data and we analyzed hundreds of millions of rows. It took the computer like 48 hours to process everything, but it dwindled everything down to 1.2 million destination addresses over hundreds of millions of rows of executed shipments from origin, right? So it all dwindled down from like a couple hundred million origin points down to just 1.2 million destinations across the state that are receiving the freight.
Yeah, it's that's interesting. It's actually fascinating to
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah. Cause we were just doing investigations on like kind of the inbound aspect, right? Which sometimes gets missed in LTL because FOB and everything. It's just LTL is so hyper focused on outbound because it's the easiest to get and easiest to walk in and start that relationship, right? Purchasing is kind of separated. So we were just curious, where's all these, 18,000 shipments a day going?
Absolutely.
That,
1.2 million. Wow.
yeah, that was pretty funny right there. So tell me about this, Kevin. What are some of the bigger trends you've noticed in your 21 years of doing this, right? It could be more B2C business, different service types, anything like that. What are some of the trends you've seen since you kind of started this in the early 2000s to now?
I think the one word that I would use is technology. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think the technology has shifted significantly over time, and some of the carriers were a little slower to adopt that
Yeah.
technology. I think they're paying a price for it today if they didn't adopt early.
Yeah.
The expectations, Bobby, of the shipper have changed. We've spoke about the high number of retirements, the older people phasing out, that the younger person coming in is a bigger appetite for for that type of technology. Maybe they like to be engaged more from a texting or a messaging app, or rather than
Yeah.
the old school of just picking up the telephone. So the technology, and I think the other piece would be visibility into the freight, visibility into where it's at. 21 years ago, we had not had exposure to Amazon yet, and some of the others were now with Amazon. My wife ordered something the other night at 10 o'clock and it was on our doorstep at 6 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah.
So that's become our expectation, Bobby. And that to me is one of the big shifts, whether that's inbound, outbound. You want to know where your freight is at. And the cheesy example literally is the Domino's pizza example. I've shared it with you before. If you order a Domino's pizza, you can track it on an app. So the argument is, if I can track a pizza on an app, why can't I track my high value
Yep.
shipment?
Yep.
That's an LTL shipment. And now it's easier said than done, but that's really to me that. And I think the one thing that's maybe very consistent over time, and you used the term earlier, is the relationship.
Yeah.
Uh, we can have all the technology we want, Bobby. We can have all the assets we want, all the systems we want, but there is the appetite still for the relationship with your account executive. And I think the other thing that's maintained is the relationship with the driver. That driver is that key cog in the relationship.
And I've seen it. Those shippers that love their driver, they'll even call them personally and be like, hey, it's ready now if you want to come in. Or the driver will call them. I see it. The good ones will.
They absolutely will. And I mean, I always tell the carriers, listen, if that driver's going into that customer every day, that driver is XPO or Averett or Daylight. That's that shipper's perception. They may talk to the account executive from time to time, but that driver is that company. That driver's your number one salesperson, Bobby.
Oh yeah.
Every day. I mean, we've heard stories, and I've seen it in the data that shippers have moved to another carrier because the driver left and went to that carrier, that they had that much of a relationship.
That's crazy. But I absolutely believe it, right? Because that's who you see and deal with every day. And you see the driver a whole lot more than you see your account executive on average.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that makes a ton of sense. Now, when you unpack visibility, and we saw kind of the rise and fall of what I'll call real-time visibility platforms being like the buzzword in the industry, just like blockchain and now AI, right? If you unpack visibility, where do you think the shipper really wants it? Is it like pre-pickup visibility, or do you think it's on the delivery side? Because either one of them are stops to origin or destination is kind of what I think they want.
I mean, I think delivery side historically has been the biggest piece. But I think as the technologies come, I'll say alive or available for the pre-pickup piece, I think that's becoming more important as well. And I think that pre-pickup visibility is going to become even more important as you're trying to manage the freight on your dock and the other modes or the other things you're using. So I think you'll see the continued rise in the pre-pickup piece, Bobby, than we've maybe seen in the past.
Well, and you've said it, one of the biggest changes you've seen is technology, and as technology has become more affluent in our space and accessible, right? You get more of it. But I do think LTL has a tough time with the distribution model of that technology, right? Just because I can have, like, Estes could have pre-pickup visibility today. In fact, I think they do. Adui Pile, I know, is one that has great, and they've had it forever, right? With, hey, you're the fourth stop loaded on the truck. But if the only place it's exposed is your website, and you only have 3% or 5% of your daily volume going through your website, how do you expose this to the other 80%? And how are you managing to work with platforms like even MyCarrier or the smaller ones out there to manage that exposure, which will impact whether the customer even sees it or not, or knows that you have it, that will dictate the answers of your survey. So I do think they need to figure out the distribution model of this cool tech. And a lot of them have adopted a lot lately. But it's about how you get it to the masses.
Well, I think, and Adui Pile's a great carrier. They're doing a wonderful job. And I do think it's almost just socialization to some degree, Bobby.
Yeah.
Is how, to your point, how can these carriers socialize this offering, if you will, that improves the shipper experience? And some of it is a lot of LTL shippers are just old school. They know what they've got to do. They don't get outside of their box too much.
So they know what they got to do is what's funny. When I challenge them on that, you always find that there is a better way. But you're right. Yes. Change management's hard, man. And that's one of these things these carriers are going to have to deal with, hey, we've got e-bill lading now. Okay, how are you going to get the shippers to adopt that? It benefits you. The math is out there behind it, but how do you, where's the carrot?
Well, and I think too, there's in many instances, there's an investment cost for the shippers to be able to go do that. And right now in this environment, that's kind of soft, but there's a provable ROI to your point.
Yeah.
And it's how do you convey that and how do you get people to change?
Yeah. And I know that's why we're so bullish on working with the carrier community to even build the network density. Because I think once you have enough network density, it becomes a lot easier to, one, distribute this technology to the masses and show them what you have. But also there's a aspect of kind of managing and measuring and closing that feedback loop off. And like, that's why I love the work we're doing with you is we've got a big pond with a lot of fish we can get a lot of fish feedback from, right? By just talking to them and raise that voice of the customer up so it's not as fragmented. And I think the better that like platforms like us can work with you as you work with the LTL carriers, we can lift that voice of the customer up, right? Not that the customer's always right, but there is merit to what they're saying about this. And I think that's where you can close the gap off on some of the misunderstanding, or why are things this way, or why can't I have things this way, or what do I need to do different for you to give me what I need.
I think, I mean, the relationship we've developed with you all on this is really some real time feedback,
Mm-hmm.
Bobby, that, hey, if there's a certain thing we want to look at, a certain area, certain issue with your big pond, like
Yeah.
you said, there's the opportunity to capture some real time feedback. And listen, I truly believe the carriers want to offer the best service available, and the customer is not always right. All
Yeah.
right. If the customer was right, we'd still, be doing things we'd never dream of today. So we really, sometimes the shipper thinks they're right, but the carrier's got to look at it from a more holistic perspective of what benefits the greater
Yeah.
good, the community, and that ongoing feedback is extremely
Yeah.
valuable.
So Mastio's kind of gotten to be like the de facto Charles Darwin of LTL. You just sit back, you get to observe this stuff. And observing and collecting information is one thing. How do you, if I'm a carrier, what do you see as like best practices, or how they take this data and actually actionize it to get results, right? Because scorecarding is only one part of the improvement process.
Great question. So when we work with the carriers, it's obviously in their best interest to utilize and really work through this data, and ours to help them. When you do
Yes.
something on an annual basis, the last thing you want is to go ask somebody to buy the next year's edition when they haven't done anything with the previous. So
Mhm.
our team at Mastio, especially Estel and Sharona, do a great job of building the deliverables for the client.
Okay.
Bobby, we're working very hard. We're piloting right now our website that allows the carriers to go look at the data as we go. And so when it's done, they've got a password. They can get right into our database, our website, see the results in
So
real time.
this aspect now.
Yes.
I
Yep.
like it.
And then we do provide slide decks, executive overviews for the carriers so that they can socialize this data. We'll do work by zip. We're
Mhm.
rolling zips up into a terminal into a region. We've done a lot of work for carriers as they've looked. There's offensive and defensive capabilities of this data.
Yeah.
There's the opportunity to understand how I'm doing, but if I want to grow over here, what are the barriers to entry from a competitive perspective? If I'm
Yeah.
going into the Northeast, A. Pyle, for example, great carrier. So they're Pitt, Ohio, that area, great carrier. So there's a lot of things to look at and understand as you grow into those regions where this data can help you. And the
Mhm.
other part of it is, Bobby, is really Mastio helping socialize this data within the carrier. I mean, I do countless data reviews with teams within the carriers. I may do one specific with operations. I've done work where we're talking just to customer service. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of different ways we carve out sections of the data that apply directly to personnel within the carrier.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know how they're doing. All right, whether that's good or bad. And everybody wants to know, how am I doing against my competition as well? So by carving out these pieces of data, working directly with the carrier, whether it's the slide decks, the raw data, we've been leveraging some AI tools to analyze the data to make it easy to consume for the carrier, because they're running a million miles an hour, as I always say,
Yeah.
and they truly are. So how can we make it easy for them to digest this, consume it, socialize it, and improve?
Oh yeah. And I say it all the time. And the LTL industry, and that includes the shippers, is a big boat with a tiny rudder. And what
Mhm.
I think that we're doing is so important is giving them a bigger rudder through information and the power of information to say, this is what you need to go change, or this is what you should go listen to in order to solve these problems.
Yep, and information's power. I mean, no,
Yeah.
it's cheesy, but it really is, and that's the world we live in today. And
Yeah.
the more folks like you and us can give these carriers insights to help improve the relationship for the shipper, then it's a win-win situation.
So, and I love the one end of this, interviewing the shipper for their feedback. Have you ever flipped this on its head and said, let's interview the carrier of their biggest challenges with dealing with said shipper, and marrying like a holistic, two-sided, this is how we feel about each other. This is marriage counseling, gang, at scale. How do we get better together?
We haven't. We have done projects like that in the energy space,
Yeah.
where we're talking to the companies that would buy the natural gas at the wellhead from the
Mhm.
producer. It would be an interesting survey to conduct, and some of the carriers may not want to know what the shipper what they think of the, or excuse me, some of the shippers may not want to know what the carriers think of them, because ultimately,
department, you're going to get a way different answer from
that's
them.
right. That's right. I mean, it's got to be like we mentioned earlier. It's got to be a win-win. And,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of the carriers are doing a very good job. I'll use the NMFC change, Bobby. So
Yeah.
many of these carriers really were on the front lines of going out, walking the dock with that shipper, helping them understand what was going on. And there's a book called The Trusted Advisor that really talks about sales reps, salespeople like me, like you. How can I build that trusted advisor relationship? And I
Yeah.
think that's critical. And I mean, you used the term relationship earlier, and it's even though it's a commodity, it's a relationship driven commodity business.
Yep. It's hero sailing. You are the
Yep.
protagonist in this story. I'm your sidekick that's just going to show you where we go kick butt at, but it's all you. And I
Yep.
think the more you get into that and educate them, I also think there's a role of technology here, right? Whether that's the carrier's website or platforms like ours, where the platform needs to do a good job educating the shipper as they go through the workflow to make them known of some of these requirements, either at an address level or commodity level. I know that we've doubled down on AI to not only look at like address level accessorial validation, but heck, reading rules tariffs to know when you're at your cube min or max, right? Or if you're not on a general rules tariff, you could have something like veritable that's specific to you, but it doesn't mean the user pushing the button knows every time they hit that, right? So I think there's a lot to be done to take kind of the rules and regulations of what products fit in LTL and design a workflow that's going to not only help the carrier, but help the shipper give them the right information. I think if you give them the right tools, they'll give you the right information. And I think we're on the precipice of that in LTL. And you've seen it over the years with different requirements and changes. If the market swings, cube mins and maxes will change. You need to be able to get that information to the shipper so they can adjust to these changes. Too many times, I think it's all caught by surprise.
Yeah, just to your point, I mean, and then that, like I said, that sales rep walking the dock and just having that type of relationship where you can marry that personal relationship with that technology piece. And
Mm-hmm.
the carriers that can do that better over time are going to be the ones that excel.
Yeah. What particular metrics? Because I think, and you've said this to me, we're 21 years into this study. We cover a lot of the same topics or metrics, right? The key indicators we measure. You've added some new ones, but what are the biggest trends and some of the key indicators that have risen or fallen as far as importance, right? Or maybe certain issues that have just been an issue for 20 years of running the study. It's just exacerbated the more access shippers have had to see the problem.
I think the one thing I would say is consistency at the top of what's important around no damages, no shortages, do what you say what you do type
Yeah.
attributes that have always been towards the top. The one attribute over the last 4 or 5 years, let me say that again, the last 3 years that's
Mm-hmm.
had more movement would be carrier is trustworthy. So we think to some degree, analyzing the data, was that a byproduct to some degree of yellow going under and just shippers wanting certainty, continuity. So that trustworthy piece is important. And that's the trust in the driver. That's the trust in the rep. So that trustworthiness piece has moved up. And then I think the other one is to really just reinforce that importance of the relationship, that ease of doing business. Those have improved as well. But there's a number of them that if I looked at year 1 to year 21, there would not be much difference. Again, the what's really not different would be the nuts and bolts, the
Yeah.
pick up, deliver, don't break my stuff,
Yeah.
give me a correct invoice. Those things have not moved much because they're always right towards the top. When we look at customer needs through a different lens, customer needs is what people tell us, but we analyze the data from a statistical perspective to really understand what they think.
Yeah.
And what they think is the ease of doing business, that relationship piece. The other piece is drivers are courteous and professional is one that's been fairly consistent over time, but's never risen but never dropped either.
Yeah. Let me go back to your first answer on trustworthiness because that one really perked my ears up and it's unique. But there's something you said in the beginning of this interview around invoice reconciliation. And when you can't get that invoice right, then the shipper starts questioning anything that you can do right. So, do you think the real catalyst behind the trustworthiness becoming a higher metric of being talked about more is simply because invoice issues have probably not increased more. I think they've always hovered around about 30% as an average for, the variance mark. I just think it's like how social media is. I don't think crime is really much higher than when you and I are kids. I think it's our accessibility to the information to know about the crime that happened,
Good
right?
point.
Has now alarmed us more. So do you think there's anything there with the shippers are just more aware of the invoice variances now, thus questioning the trust issue? Like, hey, can I trust how you're billing me? Because I was just blind paying these before, but in a
Sure.
soft market, I'm going to pay way more attention. And you said the CFO gets more involved. So now you're getting it
Mhm.
from both angles.
Yeah, I do think that could be part of it for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, the shippers have become more sophisticated.
Yeah.
And with sophistication gives, we talk about the term visibility, that's giving the shipper more visibility into that invoice
Yeah.
and understanding it better. So yeah, I think there's an absolute correlation there that might have all peaked at the same time and just has maintained that level of importance because it is that trickle down effect. If you can't do that right, then I start to question many other things. And
Yep.
trust is certainly something that could be easily questioned.
Amen on that one, man. What are you seeing as far as other trends? Do you question at all or ask on like the payment side how they pay the carriers or any issues with paying the carriers? Is there anything in the study around that?
No, not at this point. I think it's something we can definitely look at because I know there are alternatives, different things. I know MyCarrier is being active in that space as well. So this goes back to my comment earlier. As we work with carriers and our partners, is adjusting that questionnaire to reflect what the
Yep.
industry is doing. Because in the last couple of years, you could ask someone about that, and they probably wouldn't have much of any thought. But as we move forward, that's definitely something I think that's going to the forefront of the shipper's mind, the carrier's mind, especially how they
Well,
get paid.
I think that's new technology that is going to start affecting other industries as a whole. And if nobody's ever looked into how money is moved in America versus the rest of the world, we're like 30 years behind how we still move money today versus what the rest of the world is doing. I do think that is going to be another value add the carriers traverse here really soon. It's just the movement of money from quote to cash within LTL carriers. I think that'll be something that in the past they've absorbed the cost of technology to improve that internally, but that's only going to take efficiency so far. At some point, the shipper is going to have different vehicles or ways to pay the carrier beyond just your old school paper check and kicking it out the mail or logging into 5 different websites to, click a bunch of invoices that need to be paid. And, sometimes it's checks, sometimes it's credit cards, sometimes it's ACH. I do think we're on the precipice of that becoming a lot more efficient and a focal point of the quote to cash journey.
Well, I think too, we talked earlier about the transition in our personal lives with Amazon, the expectations there. Look at Venmo, Bobby. Look at Apple Pay, the different things there. I mean, that's a huge, huge movement. And as you've got a younger generation
Yeah.
more willing to interact through avenues like that, I think you see a big shift over time. I mean, it's
Heck, look at parcel. When you print postage, you've effectively paid, right?
yes,
And LTL is a very similar model to parcel. It's just pallets instead of boxes. So
yep.
that's why I kind of have the hunch that it will go in that direction sooner rather than later. It's just not at the forefront right now.
Yeah, that's something we'll have to look at for 2026.
Yeah, just interested. How do you pay your carriers? Are you happy with how you pay them? Like, is it a problem or is it just the way you've always done it? Because that's the way to do it. You don't know any better.
True.
I'd be curious, right? Because
Yep.
there's a whole back office thing here that impacts whether you do business or not. And you could lose business that way too.
Well, and I think too the ability to get. I mean, listen, the carriers want to get paid as fast as they can.
Yeah.
So what avenues can they receive that money? And the
Yeah.
shipper, it really, in most instances, I think the shippers want. That's why the accuracy of the invoice matters so much.
Yes.
I want to pay my invoice. I don't want to fight you on it. I want the right amount. I want to pay it today, and we'll move on to the bill next month.
And I know we're very bullish on trying to because in my humble opinion, the invoice reconciliation issue, 99% of the problem is on the front end. It's not the back end. The carriers are hitting it on the back end because they're the ones who delivered to that point, know the service that was required, and they're getting the money that they should for that shipment. It's a front end problem because they didn't know about it when they originated the shipment.
Mhm.
If they knew about it, they would have paid for it. At least
Sure.
most. We've
Yeah.
definitely seen the people that are like, "Catch me if you can." That
Always.
yeah,
Always. Yeah.
they're like, only 30% of them get caught, so we'll do 100% of them this way and see what happens. We've all seen those ones.
Try your luck.
Yeah. Um, Heck, Kevin, leave me with some words of wisdom before we go here. When is the study coming out? Because people are
So
anticipating this. We're going to get new rankings, new results. When is it released, and how do they get their hands on it?
yeah, so we'll release it about the first week of October,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the end of the month to our carriers. Then about a week or two after, we'll publish some results via LinkedIn to just share it. So people check out. I've got a LinkedIn page, Mastio does. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out and ping me, and I'll follow right back up.
Now, are these are public, right? So anybody can get their hands on them once it's released.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, it's available for purchase, obviously. So we do work with not just carriers. We work with private equity groups,
Okay.
hedge funds, the investment community that holds some of these public carriers as well. So that'd be another really thing I never envisioned 21 years ago. Not just the depth of the relationships, but we built, but this the width, the landscape of
Yeah.
different types, rather than just carriers.
Yeah. Well, as more and more carriers have become so big and become public companies, right? That
Hmm.
creates a whole nother vertical that now and I'm with you because I've seen them beat my doors down for information. I'm like, hey, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But
Mine's public, so that's different. So I always tell people we're the messenger, is what we are for that carrier, for the shipper community.
yep. All right, Kevin. So here, leave us with some wonderful words of wisdom here. Anything trends you're seeing, anything carriers can do better, just outlooks for the future. What do you got?
That's a tough question. It's like seeing around corners. I think one comment I would make is the resiliency of the carriers to maintain price and the discipline around that. I don't know if we're starting to see cracks. I hear little things here and there that maybe we are, but over this time frame of this softness, the ability to maintain and not go back to when Conway tried to kill Yellow or 2008. So I'm very impressed with the carriers and their ability to maintain that discipline. It's not easy, especially
Yeah.
when you've got pressure from Wall Street, and if you're a privately held company, you just have internal pressure to do
Yeah.
that. But for now, it seems to be pretty stable, and we'll see where things go over the next few months with the Supreme Court tariff decision and what the FOMC does with rates. So I think it's an interesting next few months, Bobby.
Well, I'm with you on the rate discipline, and I'll give a shout out to Todd Poland because it's on his whiteboard or his pricing commandments. Don't do dumb things at scale. And if we,
Yes.
we don't do that as an industry, then we'll be fine. And I
Yep.
think like what you mentioned is you've heard some stuff slipping through the cracks. Like I kind of consider that more anecdotal because at the end of the day, carriers are in competition with each other and they're going to compete for that business. But I think to your point, you haven't seen them compete in a dumb way, or what my basketball coaches would have said. There's hustle and there's dumb hustle, right? Both of them
Yeah.
are creating activity, but one of them's getting you in foul trouble and one's getting you a loose ball. So
Absolutely. It's like a race to the bottom is what I would call it. There's been no race to the bottom. When in previous cycles there has been, and
yeah,
this has been a very challenging. I mean, just like you, I saw
yeah,
the mid quarter data come out or the August data come out for the carriers. It was pretty soft.
yeah.
So not a surprise.
That might be the silver lining of inflation is that they've held their
Mhm.
pricing discipline because they don't have a choice.
Good point.
You don't have a choice anymore. And that's
Yeah.
probably the only silver lining of inflation that everybody hates. But it
Yes.
tightens you up, right? It's kind of like people who lived through the depression. They know how to save money in the value of a dollar because they went through something hard. So
Well, that's right.
I do think the carriers through the Great Recession and through the rise of the 3PL and learning that and getting that segment of business back to profitable again, I think there's a lot of things that have led to this pricing discipline that we're seeing today. I don't think it's any one driver. I think those three things I mentioned are probably, the biggest drivers of them holding that discipline. But I love that you're seeing the same thing I am because I do get that question that, well, isn't it just a race to the bottom? I'm like, no.
And it has been,
Yeah.
but but no, it's
Yeah.
impressive. And that speaks to the leadership teams of these carriers.
Yep.
Really does. All of them have very strong leadership teams, and And it helps when you don't have one or two carriers really doing that, Bobby.
Yeah,
So it's a monkey see, monkey do sometimes.
it
So
is.
the fact that we haven't had that, I think, is beneficial as well. So it's impressive. I would say that.
And I
So
think more carriers are getting dialed into like what nutritious freight is for Old Dominion might be different than what nutritious freight is for Central Transport, right?
true, true,
And it's just like you and me, like you might have a lower metabolism. I can eat a Twinkie or two and still be the same, right? So
yeah,
I think people need to realize that everybody's cost structure is a little different, which dictates what freight's nutritious to them. So
absolutely.
between
Well
that,
said.
it's been wonderful. I love having you on, Kevin. I can't wait to have you out here in October. Thanks for hopping on with me. And I think it was fun
Great thing.
because I haven't seen you on shows like this. So it's cool to kind of expose what is Mastio, what's behind the scenes, what goes into it, and how are those coveted awards even handed out. So thanks for coming.
Thanks for the opportunity, Bobby. I appreciate it. We'll look forward to discussing the new results here in less than a month, and I'll see you in October, my friend.
I'm gonna get my hands on them. Can't wait.
All right. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.